What are the pros and the cons of living in Silver Spring, Maryland? Well, as someone who lives here, I have to say, it's only pros. Hi, I'm Hannah Clancy-Thompson with Holler Real Estate. Welcome back to another episode of Saving DMV. And this is a channel where we talk about all things real estate in the DC metro area with an emphasis on building wealth and rescuing dogs. So if you're into that, please subscribe to keep an eye on all of the latest videos coming down the queue. What are the pros of living in Silver Spring? I think the first one that we can think of right out of the gate is its location. So it is right on top of the DC Diamond, and it extends obviously quite a bit up north. But for the people in downtown Silver Spring, you are right on top of DC, and you can metro, you can take the MARC train, you can bike, you can drive. There's all sorts of ways to get down into DC. Obviously, we're also on top of 495, 95, 295, 270, 200, all of the major highways that you think of, they're all right off of Silver Spring. And so it's great for commuting to wherever you need to get to. Obviously, also, it's cheaper than some of its neighbors like Bethesda, Chevy Chase, and it's closer to DC than Rockville and Kensington. So that's some of the pluses with its location. Probably the second most common pro that people would think of is the fact that there are trees here. So if you want to have that urban feel of living in a city, then you can get that in Silver Spring, but you can still have trees, garages, backyards. These things are pretty important for people, especially people like me who have a Doberman. We want to be able to have good places to walk our dogs, nice parks and trails to go to, big backyards to run around in, and that's something that you can get in Silver Spring, but still have all the beauty of these big trees that we have in this area. And being close to places like Sligo Creek Park is just one of the amazing features of living in Silver Spring. One of the other reasons why Silver Spring is such a great place to live is that there are so many things to do. Whether you are looking for restaurants, shops, concerts, parks, anything that you're looking for to do is available in the Silver Spring. Another pro of living in Silver Spring is our diversity. Silver Spring is one of the most diverse communities right in their area, and this is everything from both racially, culturally, national origin, your families, whether it's young professionals, families, people who have lived here their whole life. Everybody has a home here in Silver Spring, and it's one of the strengths that makes our area better in terms of food options, just generally learning and growing from other people in the neighborhood, and just experiencing all of the benefits that diversity brings to your neighborhood. All right, cons. This one's hard for me, guys. You know, I was talking to my work wife about filming this video, and I said, this is gonna be really hard. She said, why? And I said, because there are no cons. One of the reasons why I think cons is hard for me is that I just think that the cons have a lot of pros for them. So I'm gonna try really hard to give you as many cons as I can think of, but I also wanna tell you why I don't think that they're the biggest cons in the world. All right, so the first one, it's gotta be cost of living. If you haven't yet seen it, you should check out the other video in this series, which is the cost of living in Silver Spring, where I dive into this in more detail. But cost of living is definitely something that you have to take into account. It is expensive to live here. Another thing that's sort of related to cost of living is that the taxes in Silver Spring are higher than they are in DC. All right, another con is probably the fact that a lot of people here use their car to get around. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of transportation options. There are. But since I'm trying to do the cons here, a lot of people like to drive in this area. So you have just a lot more traffic. You have all of the negatives that come along with more congestion from that. Another thing that we could talk about too is the length of time it takes you to get to the metro. So a lot of times when we talk about Silver Spring, we really start to think about downtown Silver Spring. And that is a very different experience than living further north, say Colesville part of Silver Spring, which is much further north than downtown. There's a big difference in the amount of time it's going to take you to commute. Whereas in downtown Silver Spring, you might be able to walk to the metro in just a few minutes. You might need to drive and park at the metro stop if you live further north, further away from a metro line. And I think another con that people would bring up these days, especially people who've lived in Silver Spring for a really long time, is that it's really growing rapidly. There's a lot of construction now, there's a lot of expansion, new apartment buildings, new condo buildings. There's just a lot of construction. And this is really changing a lot of the dynamics of the neighborhood and definitely taking away some of that quieter town feel that it used to have if you go back, say, a decade or two. I just think that Silver Spring is a wonderful community to live in. It has a lot of things to recommend it, and I hope that you consider it. So if you have any questions about Silver Spring, living here, real estate here, text me, call me, Doberman bark it to me, get it over to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about it, or get into a little more specifics about the differences within the communities. And also stay tuned for future videos, because I am going to start breaking down Silver Spring as this big nebulous area and kind of looking at some of the pros and cons and unique things about different sub neighborhoods and communities within what we call Silver Spring. That's not just downtown.